There will now be an opportunity for silent prayer or meditation. Please be seated. The Secretary will read the order.
Debate on vote number 21, Correctional Services Appropriation Bill.
I now call upon the Honourable the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services to open the debate. The Honourable Minister.
Chairperson, colleagues, members of the Assembly, Deputy Minister of Correctional Services, Deputy Minister Thabang Makwetla, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Mr. Matolo Mutseha, and of course the Whip of the Committee, Ms. Majake, colleagues at large, the Acting Commissioner, Commissioner Modise, the Judge Shabalala, the head of the Judicial Inspectorate, and in his absence, Dr. Ramatisele, who heads the Advisory Board, Medical Parole Board. Colleagues and friends in the House at large, thank you for this opportunity to introduce the budget vote on correctional services. We, as the Department of Correctional Services, see ourselves as an important and an integral part of our integrated criminal justice system that is tasked, as mandated by the ruling party in its manifesto, to advancing the ideals expressed in the NDP of ensuring that all South Africans are and feel safe. To this end, a number of interventions, programs, and policies, as well as legislative reforms, are intended during the current term to ensure the realization of this goal. Among these key interventions are the down management of congestion in correctional centers, the resolve of the South African government to fight crime through, amongst others, the introduction of minimum sentence legislation and the broadening of the sentencing jurisdiction to cover lower courts, resulted in an exponential increase of inmate population between 1995 and 2004 from 116,846 to 187,036. This has worsened the country's international profile in respect of incarceration rates, registering 403 inmates per 100,000 population by 31,000 from 187,000, as I mentioned earlier, in 2004 to 157,170 by the end of March 2014, a reduction of 29,866 in 10 years, which equals 16% reduction. We still have a long way to go, though, because despite the progress I've just alluded to, overcrowding in general and incarceration rate from 403 to 292 inmates per 100,000 population is still very high. Part of the solution is the construction of 5,900 additional bed spaces by 2019, broadening of the use of electronic monitoring of inmates and their placement under community corrections. The area of strengthening of oversight and advisory structures is also going to be an area of focus. Besides overcrowding, we have noted that incidents of violence and gang-related atrocities among offenders, as well as the stabbings of officials, continue to increase in some areas. We have set up a high-level national task team to investigate these incidents, assess our security systems, and make recommendations on the type, scale, and scope of intervention to arrest and reverse them. The task team has begun its work in St. Albans Correctional Center in Nelson Mandela Bay, Eastern Cape, where we have witnessed continued incidents of violence. I note with appreciation the good work of the Judicial Inspectorate of Correctional Services under the leadership of Judge Vuka Shabalala, who I have had an opportunity to meet briefly recently. We will endeavor to ensure that nothing inhibits their ability to provide the constitutionally guaranteed judicial oversight on correctional services going forward. This is also to ensure that the rights of inmates under our Constitution are also respected. Now, coming to improving the remand detention system, in March 2014, the Department of Correctional Services concluded a groundbreaking policy framework on the management of remand detainees. The passing of the white paper on remand detention in South Africa is a significant milestone in this regard. The policy seeks to close a gap left by the white paper on corrections passed in 2005, as well as the amendment made to the Correctional Services Act, that is the current act. Through continued transformation of the country's remand detention system, South Africa is now urging closer to the ideal international target of 25% of all inmates being remand detainees. Since the year 2000, remand detainees have been reduced by 31.9% from 63,954 to 41,600 in June 2014, of which 5%, that is 1,922, has spent at least 2 years in custody. This is a product of increased collaboration with various partners within the criminal justice cluster, which will be further enhanced with the establishment of an integrated Ministry of Justice and Correctional Services. Interventions include the tracking of these categories of remand detainees for periodic referral to courts in line with Section 49 of the Correctional Services Act as amended. The Office of the Criminal Justice Review has recently started looking at the top 20 longest awaiting trial detainees in order to address human rights issues and the right to a speedy trial. It is estimated that over 9% of inmates will return to the society after doing time for various offenses. Presently, 95% of inmates will return to society. Presently in South Africa, 69% of 157,170 inmates are youth of 35 years of age or younger. Most of them are from broken families with a weak understanding and commitment to key social values, poor education, low levels of education generally, with little to lose. We will continue to build on the foundation established since the advent of democracy in terms of our rehabilitation interventions by ensuring that from 2014-15 financial year, 64% of offenders complete correctional programs, and that an 80% participation rate of offenders involved in education and skills development programs is maintained. And may I also add on this note that we see this department playing a critical role from a preventative point of view in ensuring that we encourage positive behavior amongst young people in order to further reduce the number of young people being involved in crime. We'll step up the collaboration with, amongst others, established universities, the National Youth Development Agency, the sector education and training agencies, the departments of basic and higher education, as well as labor. Healthcare services will also receive attention. The department has ensured access to effective primary health care, while those in need of secondary and tertiary healthcare services are taken to public health care facilities. The fight against the scourge of HIV/AIDS as well as tuberculosis will be intensified. We'll improve the percentage of inmates that are tested for HIV and AIDS and ensure that appropriate services are provided in this regard. The next area of focus will be optimizing technology alternatives to incarcerations and for victims' participation. In November 2014, we expect to launch a video conferencing system in all 53 correctional supervision and parole board CPSB offices in South Africa. This innovation is intended to help reduce the barriers of participation in the parole hearings, like physical distance and language barriers, to our effort, to our efforts of centralizing victims in the determination of offender parole hearings. Although phenomenal progress was made since 2009, mobilizing victims to participate in parole hearings of the CSPB from just 108 to 1,125 cases per year, this still represents less than 5% of hearings that result in parole placements of offenders that roughly reaches 25,000. With this video conferencing capacity built with funding from the Criminal Asset Recovery Account, victims can be informed to go to their nearest CSPB offices and be linked to the actual parole board hearings. And let me emphasize that in line with the obligations under the law and the Constitution, we will intensify victim participation to ensure that we strike a balance in our criminal justice system. The area of social integration is another focus area that we'll give attention to. We'll embark on an intensive campaign of promoting alternative sentences within the cluster, establish social compacts to strengthen social acceptance of ex-offenders, enhance restorative justice, and tightening theft supervision of parolees, probe probationers, and remand detainees as well. Although there has been phenomenal improvement in compliance with conditions of probationers and parolees from 82% in 2012, 13 to 94% in 2013-14, the department will invest more on building the credibility of the system amongst the criminal justice partners and communities. Honorable Chairperson, I'm delighted to say there are many pockets of excellence within the Department of Correctional Services where unemployed youth, surrounding communities, and other beneficiaries get brought in over a period of time to be trained with offenders in, amongst others, motor mechanics, furniture making, electrical engineering, and business management. The building of institutional capacity will receive attention. We shall ensure that the department functions at full capacity with respect to the filling of strategic vacancies or posts, including the posts of National Commissioner, Chief Financial Officer, Chief Deputy Commissioner of Strategic Management, and the Regional Commissioner of Limpopo, Mpumalanga, and Northwest Region. This will be done as part of ensuring that all strategic and operational vacant positions are filled in order to strengthen the managerial capacity of the department. We have planned to also train an average of 16,400 officials, 500 officials, sorry, each year in line with the workplace skills plan to gear the department for a heightened delivery of services over the next 5 years and beyond. Alongside the human capital focus and investment will be the modernization of the correctional system in order to provide a reliable, integrated, and secured information and communication technology, ICT, infrastructure, and system. This includes an integrated inmate management system for a single view of inmate and offender information based on biometric identification of inmates and offenders to curtail instances of identity fraud and erroneous releases. With regard to the budget and good governance, the budget of the department for the 2014-15 is 19.721 billion rands, projected to increase over the MTF to 20 billion 795,000 in 2015-2016, and to reach 22.08 billion rands in 2016-2017 at an average growth rate of 5.9%. 7.6%. Amounts totaling 72.6 million rands in 2014-15, 72.8 million rands in 2015-16, and 77.9 million rands in 2016-17 have been reprioritized within the 2014 MTF baseline from non-core goods and services items for spending on the following policy priorities: implementation of victim-offender dialogue, purchasing of security equipment, replacement of dilapidated workshop and agricultural machinery and equipment, and integrated inmate management systems.
Honourable Minister, unfortunately your time has expired. Thank you.
Thank you very much, and I hope all colleagues support this budget vote. I thank you, Chairperson.
Thank you, Honourable Minister. The next speaker is the Honourable Mocheka.
Honorable House Chairperson, Honorable Minister Masuta, Honorable Deputy Minister Makwetla, Commissioner Modise, Inspecting Judge Chabalala, Dr. Ramatisela, officials of the department and the entities, and honorable MPs. The challenges of high levels of crime, overcrowding in our correctional centers, recidivism, and challenges of rehabilitation and social integration cannot and will not be understood without the understanding of the legacy of slave trade, colonialism, and apartheid, which manifested itself in the triple challenge of poverty, unemployment, and inequalities. It is this legacy of apartheid colonialism that prompted President Jacob Zuma's administration to come up with his radical socio-economic development program. Honorable Minister, the ANC support your radical program of action and believe that it will go a long way to address this legacy of the past that my friends on the other side wants to wish away. To remind them, the slave trade, colonialism, and apartheid destroyed the African social fabric and created moral decay and socio-economic conditions, which breeds crime and corruption. You are the architects of the challenges that we are having today. Towards the end of the 19th century, African people were conquered and dispossessed of land and its natural resources. The establishment of the Union of South Africa in 1910 was followed by the passage of the Land Act of 1913, which made South Africa a white man's land and allocated only 7% of the total surface of South Africa to the African majority. This resulted in overcrowding and demands of Africans for land, forcing the colonial authorities to increase African territories to only 13% of the total surface of South Africa, which was barren and unable to sustain people and livestock. This forcible dispossession of land and its natural resources created the triple challenge of poverty, unemployment, and inequalities, which forced Africans to seek work in mines, white farms, and industries. As the colonial authorities did not provide housing, Africans became labor tenants and squatters on the white man's land. The resulting human and material conditions degraded and dehumanized the landless African people and rendered them homeless, hopeless in the country of their birth. Thus, the struggle of the African people was primarily for the restitution of their land and the recovery of their humanity, Ubuntu Butu, and its inherent values of human dignity, equality, freedom, and justice for all. The democratic state inherited this legacy of colonialism and apartheid, which was exacerbated by the lack of education and Bantu education, as the Honorable Minister said. Therefore, in June 2011, the National Development Commission identified 9 key challenges facing the democratic state. These challenges include youth unemployment, poverty, and high levels of inequality and social conditions which are a fertile ground for crime. So my friends on the other side know where crime comes from now. I hope they will help support the minister's program. South African correctional centers, therefore, are full of African victims of colonialism and apartheid who have made South Africa an unsafe country to live in. Hence, Vision 2013 of the NDP is to build safer communities. In these circumstances, incarceration cannot be the primary goal of our correctional centers. The primary goal must be to remove criminals from society in order to rehabilitate and reintegrate them into society as productive citizens. South Africa faces a special challenge because 70% of the population is under the age of 35, and the majority of the inmates are young people. As the youth are our future, it means incarceration delays youth development and therefore arrests our future. The NDP has correctly identified the need to increase substance abuse treatment during incarceration, increase education, training, and skills program within the correctional centers, urge business to work together with the Department of Correctional Services to positively identify skills needs for development that would increase the chances of absorption into the economy after their release, capacitate community organizations to assist with reintegration after release, identify, vet, resource, and use these organizations. So therefore, the Honorable Minister's program is fully in line with the NDP and will certainly take South Africa forward. The committee therefore welcomes, the ANC therefore welcomes the commitment of the Ministry for the strategies that will hasten transformation, such as broad-based black economic empowerment, gender equity, poverty alleviation, and job creation, because all this will help to heal the wounds of the past and create safer and better communities. This is what we mean by radical socio-economic transformation. The current mission of the department is consistent with the National Development Plan. It seeks to contribute to maintaining and protecting a just, peaceful, and safe society by enforcing court decisions and sentences in line with relevant legislation, detaining all inmates in safe custody while ensuring their human dignity, and promoting the general development of all inmates and those subject to community corrections. This correctional policy will create conducive conditions for the development and rehabilitation of the youth in the correctional centers. The strategic goals of this department, Honorable Minister, are in line with what this country requires, because this country says the youth are our future, and these thousands of youth have been placed in your care in these correctional centers, and unless you do as you promise, it means our country has no future, because those kids in those centers will have no future. So, Honorable Member, therefore, the African National Congress wants to give you full support in your work, because you have correctly diagnosed the problem and developed the appropriate plan to deal with that. In particular, the African National Congress Minister wants to support your plowback strategy linked to past release activities that will see ex-offenders and parolees becoming involved in activities aimed at rebuilding society's trust in them and enabling them to make meaningful contributions to social and economic development. In both urban and rural areas, Honorable Minister, as you pointed out, there are unused land, buildings, agricultural implements that can be used to advance your plowback strategy. I can assure you, Honorable Minister, that as the MPs of the African National Congress, we will use our PCOs to mobilize society, to mobilize other youth, to mobilize institutions, to make sure that your plowback strategy does not become just a talk, but a reality. We also want to support, Honorable Minister, your idea of creating centers of excellence. These correctional centers must produce skilled youth that will become your foot soldiers in the plowback program. And therefore, Honorable Minister, we believe that your approach is going to make rehabilitation and social integration the easiest. We also believe that given the limited resources, your idea of mobilizing universities, FET colleges, community organizations, faith-based organizations to partner with your department makes absolute sense. And we also think that, Honorable Minister, your department should also work with other departments like social development, COCTA, SNDF, who already have formal agreements with the interfaith movement to make sure that these programs are implemented. Honorable Minister, there are people who don't understand that human development has spiritual and material aspects. And they think that human beings are just pigs that must be fed and grow so that they make profit.
Order, honorable members.
Human beings are spiritual, are first and foremost spiritual beings with mind, body, and soul. And Honorable Minister,
Order, honorable members.
Honorable Minister, your idea of working with faith-based organization makes absolute sense because human beings, especially the youth, must be holistically developed. That means you must develop their spiritual and their physical being so that they are complete and useful citizens. And those whose children are not in the correctional services specialize in making noise when we are discussing matters of great importance to the nation. And they forget that their current prosperity is directly linked to the conditions in the prisons. Because they refuse to share their prosperity, they create poverty and unemployment, and when they have to employ, either as lawyers and everything, they only look after their kind. We are committed to building a united, non-racial, non-sexist, democratic
Order, honorable members.
Africa, which is prosperous, in which all the worth of everybody will be measured by our common humanity. We don't care, unlike you, of the color of the skin. So we want to assure you,
Order, honorable
We
members.
want to assure you that with or without you, we are going to take South Africa forward under the leadership of this minister. Honorable Minister, let me conclude by saying that you have inspired us to think that we must have a Save the Youth campaign, which will ensure that every young person that comes out of a correctional center finds a reception committee waiting and will find jobs in terms of the plowback campaign that the minister is going to lead. So adulthood means self-respect and respect for others and ability to listen to others so that you can learn. Because the African National Congress leads, teaches, and delivers. And we are going to deliver and take South Africa forward. I thank you.
Order, honorable members. Order. Thank you, honorable member. The next speaker is the honorable self.
Thank you. Thank you very much indeed, Chairperson. I'm not sure whether we heard just now a sermon or a history lesson, but I'd like to congratulate the Minister and the Deputy Minister on their appointments, and I'd also like to pay tribute to the many thousands of dedicated officials of the Department of Correctional Services who perform exemplary work in very difficult circumstances. Now, this is the first year since we became a democracy that the Departments of Correctional Services and Justice are merged into a single ministry. On one level, this makes perfect sense because so much of what happens in correctional services is affected by the efficiencies of the justice system. Good case flow management ought to lead to fewer remand detainees, which in turn ought to result in less overcrowded facilities. Effective and integrated IT systems will allow both the justice system and the correctional services system to identify offenders, record previous convictions, sentence them appropriately, manage their sentence plan, and in due course allow the parole boards to recommend the release of deserving individuals. Yet both the departments are very complex. Both require careful, labor-intensive management and oversight, particularly by Parliament. I worry that because of the complexities of the work of the Justice Department and the legislation that it is planning to introduce, such as the Traditional Courts Bill and the restructuring of the Magistrates' Courts, the Portfolio Committee on Justice and Correctional Services will not be able to spend the time and effort required for proper oversight of the correctional centres. I fear that the correctional services will become the stepchild in this relationship. And that is not good, because there are 243 correctional centres in South Africa that accommodate about 157,000 inmates. Many of the facilities are old and dilapidated and do not lend themselves to rehabilitation. A further 66,000 odd probationers and parolees are supervised by the Community Corrections Branch.
Honorable Self, can you just give us a moment, please? Yes, honorable member, what is your point?
Chairperson, is Honorable Self ready to take a question?
I'll take it at the end if I have time.
Continue, honorable Self.
Many of the facilities are old and dilapidated, and the department has a staff of roughly 42,000 people. The fact is that there are major problems in the Department of Correctional Services. The problems are not new, but they remain unresolved, largely because of a lack of continuity in the senior leadership and management of the department. Since 1994, the DCS has had 6 ministers and 7 national commissioners and many acting national commissioners in between. It has had 6 different judges heading up the Judicial Inspectorate since its establishment in 1998. And so the challenges that were identified by Commissioner Sitoli in 1998 remain substantially the challenges facing Acting Commissioner Modise in 2014. These include overcrowding, gangsterism, endemic corruption, labor disputes and dissatisfaction, dangerous working conditions, unfilled and underfunded posts, difficulty in filling and retaining scarce skills, and a misaligned budget that is geared towards warehousing offenders rather than rehabilitating them. Now, the test of any system of correctional services must be whether an inmate emerges a better person from prison than when he or she was admitted. The sad truth is that given all these problems, South Africa's correctional services system fails that test. Our inmates emerge, by and large, more criminalized than when they were sentenced. The result is a depressingly high rate of reoffending, which, depending on who you believe, is somewhere between 70 and 90%. As early as 1910, Winston Churchill, then the British Home Secretary, said that the first principle of prison reform was, quote, to prevent as many people as possible from getting there at all. So this problem is neither new nor unique to South Africa. Many other countries have similar situations, but we need to aim higher and think differently. That is why, with a new minister spanning both portfolios, I would like to make some concrete proposals to break this vicious cycle. But let me be very clear. South Africa is characterized by very high levels of crime and violent crime. Just about every South African has been the victim of crime, and too many have been the victim of violent crime. We cannot enjoy our constitutional rights and freedoms if we live in constant fear of crime. The monsters who commit those crimes deserve to be in prison for a very long time. But at the same time, not every offender belongs in prison. South Africa also needs a regime of unpleasant, corrective, but non-custodial sentences that can be applied, in particular, to first-time, non-violent and young offenders. That requires a partnership with all spheres of government, with NGOs and with the private sector, and with faith-based organizations, for what it's worth, so that offenders can visibly and demonstrably pay back to society that which they have robbed from it. That involves community service orders, painting schools in underprivileged areas, building houses, working in morgues, attending to the sick in hospices, clearing alien vegetation. But then these sentences must be seen, especially by judicial officers, to be effective and enforced. But at the same time, alternative sentences needs to be encouraged. Without detracting from the independence of the judiciary, what about an amendment to the Criminal Procedure Act that requires a judicial officer to provide compelling reasons why a prison sentence of less than, say, 6 months is appropriate in the case of non-violent first-time offenders? Because a prison sentence invariably leads to the loss of an offender's job, if he or she has one. It leads to breakdowns in family relationships. It very often means that inmates are forced to join a prison gang simply to survive. A prison sentence also costs a lot. Costs the taxpayer 300 rands per day to incarcerate somebody. That is 9,000 rands a month. So a 6-month sentence costs an inmate his liberty, his job, his relationships, and may force him into further criminality. There are no rehabilitative programs for sentences under 2 years. So it costs the taxpayer 54,000 rands simply to warehouse a person for 6 months. Frankly, it makes no sense. Secondly, we need to look at the issue of criminal records. Very few ex-inmates are able to find jobs when it is known that they have a criminal record. Without jobs, many former inmates simply resort to more crime. Ex-Minister Ndebele talked approvingly of what is called second chance legislation, whereby the criminal records of certain categories of first-time offenders are withheld, provided that those offenders participate in rehabilitative programs, adhere to all aspects of their parole conditions, and do not reoffend. The confidence of the judiciary in handing down non-custodial sentences will be hugely enhanced with the successful rollout of electronic monitoring of probationers, parolees, and those released pending trial. We have consistently supported electronic tagging and were therefore delighted when at last a pilot project was initiated. But a contract was recently awarded to a firm called Engineering System Solutions, which is part of the TMM Holdings for the rollout of electronic monitoring devices, and 87 million rands is being budgeted for this over the next 3 years. This contract was awarded with blatant disregard of supply chain management procedures, apparently at the insistence of the then acting National Commissioner, Mrs. Jolingana. The question we need to ask is, why were those supply chain management procedures disregarded? Who benefited from this deal? And what is the minister going to do about it? Likewise, Mrs. Jolingana recently commissioned the Department of Public Works to conduct a feasibility study into the possible sale of Polesmoor and Leeuwkop correctional centres. Both these properties are highly valuable and would realise billions of rands if sold on the open market. It may very well be that these prisons are both old and badly situated. But if these transactions were to go ahead, it is essential that they be subject to the closest possible scrutiny. The reason is that the problem that DCS faces is a history of corruption on a major scale. This was first chronicled by the Jolly Commission. But 5 years ago, the SIU reported to the Portfolio Committee that the former CFO, Mr. Patrick Gillingham, had received bribes to award a catering contract to Bosasa. Mr. Gillingham has not yet been prosecuted. Yet a short while later, an extension to the catering contract was awarded to Bosasa. Again, despite the fact that its bid was not competitive. The minister talked approvingly about biometric controls. In point of fact, we have biometric controls in many correctional centres from a contract awarded to a company called Sondolo. But it doesn't work, and when we went on oversight visits previously, we found that the access control systems were operated by handcuffs. So, Minister, you face a big challenge. You've got a big mountain to climb. It is clear that the DCS is in trouble. It's failing in its primary mission, despite the heroic efforts of many thousands of dedicated officials. It is tainted with corruption. It requires radical transformation. But is the minister up to doing this? That is the question he needs to answer before we will support this budget vote. Thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Litchfield Chabalala.
Thank you, Honourable Chair, Honourable Minister, Honourable Members, and esteemed visitors. A correctional facility, as the name is indicative, is a place for correctional behavior, or as criminologists would have it, a place for rehabilitation. It is certainly not a place where you are incarcerated, awaiting trial for years, and in the process get raped, get infected with TB, or even HIV. A correctional facility is a place where, by taxpayers' tacit agreement, you are incarcerated, which is why we dealt away with the death sentence, in order that in the process you come to terms with your deviant or counterculture behavior. Society hopes that in the process you will go through remorse and that you shall be reintegrated back into society. And rehabilitation is certainly not limited to how many young people passed matric or passed a degree within that given financial year. It is a thorough, deep-going program with measurable objectives and timelines. Obviously, it is a multidisciplinary approach that involves a whole lot of people: psychologists, your criminologists, social workers, psychiatry, religious clerics. So in its nature, it costs money. And we might be told that money is not available. Well, it is. If government is willing to press their multinational cooperation friends just a little and squeeze that money out of them, that they take out of this country to tax evasion. The current situation in our correctional facilities, much has been said, is not really commendable. According to a 2013 statistic, a research done by the University of Free State, led by a Professor Low, forensic psychologist, head of law and psychology in that university, who has worked with offenders for the last 40 years, 80% of offenders in our prisons were repeat offenders, with a sizable number of them already having developed into what is termed hardcore prisoners. In that same year, by admission of the then Minister of Correctional Services, overcrowding was sitting at 133%. He admitted we had 119,000 beds for 140,000 prisoners. A research done in 2011 by the World Bank, UNAIDS, and World Health Organization said the current HIV scourge amongst our prison population is sitting at 40 to 45%. That's pretty high. It is against this background that it is extremely hard for the EFF to support this budget, because we shall be saying yes to another 20th year of what has been happening in correctional service since 1994, which is far from rehabilitation and the tacit agreement of the taxpayers' money that these prisoners shall be reintegrated back into society. If EFF is elected into government, we are going to make sure that we eradicate all form of prison privatization. For prisoners' lives are not a commodity to be exchanged between those who have money and those who do not have it. Secondly, we will ensure...
Honourable Member, will you just hold? Honourable Machecha, why are you rising?
Will the Honourable Member take a question?
Honourable Member, do you want to take a question from the
No,
Honourable Member?
I will not, because I've pretty much come to be aware that it's a time-delaying tactic.
Continue, Honourable Member.
We shall also ensure that the prisoner's right to work is guaranteed. For it is a God-given right, but apart from that, in work is rehabilitation itself. It is therapeutic and psychosocially restoring. We will also ensure the prisoner's right to vote. It is a right guaranteed for them within the Constitution. We will also ensure that correctional services staff is adequately protected and that an investigation is opened to ensure that they are paid accordingly for the dangerous work that they are involved in on a daily basis. We will also ensure that prisoners' rights in terms of health are guaranteed. The first thing that needs to happen is that the scourge of HIV has to be stopped right there. The infection rate cannot continue higher than what it is now. Honourable Chairperson, we are grateful for the opportunity we have had, and we do take our hat off for the correctional services staff who are engaged in a daily battle for survival in conditions that are extremely unfavorable for the kind of work that they are involved in. I thank you.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is Honourable Mgwango.
Thank you, the Honourable Chairperson, Honourable Minister and Honourable Deputy Minister. The failures of correctional services are consistently in the news, with many officials being arrested for their involvement in criminal activities. It can be disheartening for our people to see how incompetent some of the authorities are when it comes to keeping criminals in jail and ensuring public safety. I have here the case in point, the Westville prison in KwaZulu-Natal, which has not only become notorious for these activities, but have become the national headquarters for such criminal activities. The level of overcrowding in prisons does not make the job of the under-resourced and underpaid staff any easier. Awaiting trial prisoners add to the overcrowding as police investigations are very slow. Even those first-time offenders who have a fine less than 1,000 rand find themselves in the midst of hardened criminals as the courts refuse to release them. The police, the courts, and the department need to look into the issue, as overcrowding also breeds many diseases. One would find that hardened criminals are part of different prison gangs, which sometimes end up running the prison. Juvenile offenders are also mixed with these criminals, some of whom rape these young people. One can go to prison having stolen a loaf of bread and come out not only molested, but also as a more sophisticated criminal. Government can create policies that ensure that, one, those who have been sentenced to 3 years or less are kept in separate prisons, and those that are under 18 years are put under the care of social welfare. Those under 25 years also receive their own facilities away from hardened criminals. In order to ensure that staff are incentivized and encouraged to do their jobs honestly, career progression must be re-evaluated. Very often, umuntu hlala lapha as a warder for 1,000 years before he actually gets promoted. And that must be reviewed, Mr. Minister. Most stay in one position for too long, making them susceptible to corruption. And if they want to advance through the ranks, they may end up paying a lot of people to approve their appointment. Our parole system is also being horrendously abused. Individuals who are politically connected claim to be terminally ill and then released on medical parole. Not only is Shabir Sheikh still very much alive, he continues to revel in his freedom by playing golf and very often frequenting pubs where he is seen enjoying a gulp of whiskey. While Jackie Celebi is no longer on his deathbed, but is now even found in movie theaters, while those who deserve parole still languish in jail. There is no reason why APLA soldiers and SPU units are still in jail. These are the people who actually contributed immensely to the freedom and the democracy that we enjoy now. We need this department to relook at the way it functions and take responsibility for its failures. Otherwise, the public is being lied to when it is told that criminals are truly behind bars. The Gusasa company that actually has been mentioned here is also responsible for the management.
Honourable Member, your time has expired. Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Order, Honourable Members. The next speaker is the Honourable Groenewald.
Agbare voorsitter, ek wil begin om te sê vir die agbare Motshekga, ek is baie bly hy besef varke moet ook gevoer word. Ek stel voor hy moet met sy kollega Tande Modise praat, laat sy ook besef varke moet gevoer word. Agbare voorsitter, die agbare Motshekga was die hoofsweep van die ANC. But he got fired because of his incompetency. And he's an expert in incompetency. And that's why he is, every time he can't solve a problem, he's blaming it on apartheid. So, Honourable Minister, please don't pay attention to what the Honourable Motshekga had said. Ek wil vir die agbare minister sê, minister, u beklee nou die nuwe pos. Daar's baie uitdagings. U het 'n goeie oorsig gegee. Ek wil nou vir u sê, en ek sluit aan by vorige sprekers, dat die grootste uitdaging wat u sal moet hanteer, is die korrupsie wat plaasvind in die departement. En as ons dit sê, dan sê ons nie al die amptenare is korrup nie. Ons weet daar is goeie amptenare.
Honourable Minister.
Is it parliamentary for an honourable member to reflect on the competence of another honourable member?
Thank you, Honourable. That ruling was made also yesterday, and the issue of the competence should not arise. So it's part of rule.
Wat sê u vir my, agbare voorsitter? Sê u vir my ek mag dit nie sê nie. As 'n agbare lid onbevoeg is, agbare voorsitter, dan is hy of sy onbevoeg. En as dit die waarheid is, dan is dit die waarheid. En ek sal vir u nou sê, ek sal my nie laat voorskryf om vir my te sê ek kan nie vir 'n onbevoegde agbare lid sê hy is onbevoeg nie.
Chairperson.
Hy is onbevoeg. Dis so eenvoudig soos dit.
Chairperson, on a point of order.
Point of order.
Thank you, Chairperson. I thought you have made a ruling on this matter, and I don't understand why honourable member wants to continue on it.
That there should be no repetition. It's according to the House rules. You must read your House rules. If you don't understand them, it's none of a problem. You don't have a problem.
Okay, order, honourable members. We need to maintain the decorum of the House, and we need to respect honourable members. I would request that members refrain from using strong language, refrain from that, and as part of the decorum of the House. Honorable Member, please continue.
Okay, maybe you misunderstood me, Honorable Chair. I didn't say he's incompetent. I only said he's an expert in incompetency.
Honorable Mutsecha.
Honorable Chairperson, is it parliamentary to lie by explaining the actions of organizations that you are not a member of?
Honorable Mutsecha. Please, Honorable Member.
Dankie, agbare voorsitter. Ek is beslis nie lid van die ANC en ek sal ook nooit die een word nie. Kom ek sê vir die agbare minister. En agbare minister, u moet daardie korrupsie aanspreek. Maar daar is nou baie van my tyd gemors. Ek wil ernstig met u praat. Agbare minister, u het 'n paroolraad. Die paroolraad ondersoek 'n bepaalde geval. Hulle kyk na die meriete daarvan en dan beveel hulle aan of 'n persoon parool kan kry of nie. En ek verwys spesifiek na die Eugene de Kok geval. Agbare minister, u moes 'n besluit geneem het. Maar u het 'n politieke besluit geneem. Nou wil ek vir u sê, as daar een gevangene is wat 'n politieke gevangene is, dan is dit Eugene de Kok. En u moet my mooi verstaan, ek ken hom nie, ek ondersteun nie wat hy gedoen het nie en ek het nooit vir die regering van daardie dag gestem nie. Eugene de Kok is in die rug gesteek deur die voormalige president van Suid-Afrika, meneer F.W. de Klerk. Want u moet onthou, die ANC was beter as die nasionale party wat gesorg het dat hulle kamerade, meer as 20,000 van hulle, 'n blanco amnestie gekry het nog voor die Waarheids- en Versoeningskommissie. F.W. de Klerk en sy trawante kan ek amper sê, het goed gedink in hulle arrogansie dat dit nie nodig is om dit te gedoen het nie. En nou is Eugene de Kok die slagoffer daarvoor. En ek wil 'n beroep op u doen, agbare minister. As u die besluit neem 'n meriete besluit. Nie 'n politieke besluit nie. Want ek wil vandag vir u sê, en u het gehoor by die vorige, die agbare Mtswanga ook, as dit gaan oor politieke besluite, dan doen u dit 'n onreg aan en misken u 'n paroolraad. Ek dank u.
Thank you, Honorable Groenewald. The Honorable Deputy Minister of Correctional Services.
Thank you, Honorable Chairperson. The Honorable Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Minister Mike Masuta, Chairperson of the Portfolio Committee, Dr. Mutole Mutsecha, colleagues, members of the Portfolio Committee, the House at large. Allow me to take cue from my minister and acknowledge our distinguished guests at this budget debate this morning who are in the gallery, the eminent heads and members of the complementary bodies which constitute the Correctional Services Dispensation Regime, on whose behalf we are also accounting today. Your valuable labor and civic duty are sincerely appreciated. Honorable members, our budget debate today signals the commencement of yet another determined and spirited 5 years in government to programmatically bring to life the vision of a transformed correctional service in South Africa, as articulated in the white paper on corrections in South Africa, published in February 2005. As we start this countdown by putting before Parliament the annual performance plans for year one, that is the financial year 2014-2015, we do so, as the Minister emphasized, with commitment and the discipline to foreground the imperatives of Vision 2030, South Africa's National Development Plan. It is our intention to diligently implement our plans while we simultaneously continue to work on our plans with a view to achieve conditions where South Africans are safe and feel safe in their communities. We will strive to understand and appreciate the lay of the land, so to speak, such that in time we can produce a framework which projects targets and milestones that delineate the main objectives of each of the 3 MTSF time spans leading up to the year 2030, a South Africa we envision. In the recent general elections, South Africans voted overwhelmingly for radical change. In canvassing his view about radicalism, the radicalism of the change South African voters want to see in government, Joel Nechitenje, the executive director of Mapungube Institute for Strategic Reflections, argues that this radicalism with regard to the state has to include the totality of measures required to improve its capacity to implement its policies, be it in relation to economic and social infrastructure or the industrial policy action plans. The intent of government should be felt in actual implementation, informed by clear high-level objectives that are understood by public servants, the private sector, and civil society alike, unquote. If we accept the probability of the correctness of this assertion, we'll almost likely agree that the same applies to the security sector cluster we belong to in government. Joel further concurs with Minister Masuta's sentiments that South Africans want a state that is legitimate, efficient, and ethical. One of the pivotal goals of the Justice and Correctional Services Ministry is the fight against corruption, as the minister unequivocally stated when he introduced the presentation of this budget and plans to the Portfolio Committee a few weeks ago. This commitment finds resonance in the National Development Plan in its assertion that in a developmental state, unions share responsibility for the quality of services delivered, for improving the performance of government, and for fighting corruption and efficiency, unquote. Honorable members, what then are the high-level objectives that we as public servants and our partners in the private sector and civil society must understand and be clear about? Chairperson, honorable members, I wish to venture a view that the high-level objective which our correctional service is in pursuit of is best articulated in the revolutionary thought once articulated by one of the most accomplished social reformers the African continent has produced in the contemporary period, the first president of independent Angola, Dr. Agostinho Neto, the president of MPLA, when he argued that the lumpen proletariat to remain progressive as part of the motive forces for popular change after victory over colonial oppression, irrespective of the heroism of its participation in that struggle, the lumpen proletariat must commit class suicide as a social strata. Failing which, it must be crushed by the popular masses that it was previously in alliance with in defense of social change. Honorable Chairperson, excuse me for the gibberish. The long and short of what, because members on the opposition benches may not understand what I've just said. The long and short of what I wish to convey is that in our newly established democratic order, the high-level objective of the Department of Correctional Services, its end game is the rehabilitation of offenders as part of the eradication of crime and the drastic reduction of our prison population. Crime is anti-people. It terrorizes communities. Crime undermines investor confidence. Crime undermines development. Crime is counter-progressive. Crime erodes the freedom that so many sacrifice their lives for in a quest to realize a better life for our people. Crime is counter-revolutionary, Chairperson. Allow me to share with this House an instructive experience relevant to our debate this morning. A struggle friend of mine who I have always admired for his sharp insights into life in black communities of our country, in particular the urban townships, abruptly scuppered our plan to spend the weekend together in order to catch up on each other's private life. Unfortunately, our cozy plan was rudely disrupted by an urgent call that his house had been burglared. He rushed back home to find his house cleaned out of everything electronic and easily movable. When I called him a day later to find out how he was coping, he was at his normal, calm, and upbeat self. I had called to console him because I naturally expected him to be still angry and upset. In his typical demeanor, he took this blow in his stride and with excitement explained to me that what happened is to be expected. His voice was of someone who did not bear any grudge against the perpetrators. Like a sage, he went on to explain that what happened is a natural outcome of the system, in parentheses, that we, the leaders, who have lost the perpetrators of the colors break into his house, they feel that we no longer belong together. They feel destitute and abandoned. What they have done is now a problem facing him and the state, that is the police. They couldn't be bothered about his plight right now. He said at the height of rudimentary organs of popular power in the black townships during the apartheid days, this would not have happened. He quickly came with a rejoinder while I was still quietly internalizing what he was telling me and said, actually, I am ideally placed to do something about it. I have a golden opportunity to reach to these people, to reconnect with them. He said, you can nurture a momentous prison reform movement that can drastically bring down criminal behavior in our communities. Remember, he continued, these people are among the most entrepreneurial individuals in our communities who think out of the box most of the time. They can be rehabilitated. Chairperson Kofi Annan, the former Secretary General of the United Nations, once said, and I quote, no one is born a good citizen. No nation is born a democracy. Rather, both are processes that continue to evolve over a lifetime. Young people must be included from birth. A society that cuts off from its youth severes its lifeline, unquote. This means that as a department mandated to rehabilitate and reintegrate offenders, we will have to be visible agents in the moral, social, and economic reconstruction of our country. Our clients are not only inmates, but the society that produces offending behavior. We must be at the forefront of the battle that discourages criminal behavior, especially in the preventative campaigns targeted at young people. Our offenders and parolees will be valuable to educate the youth that crime does not pay. We should always bear in mind that effective crime fighting relies on community cooperation. And I do not expect, of course, some of my colleagues to understand this. Honorable members, part of our work during this administration is to educate the public about the National Register for Sex Offenders. While the National Register is not open to the public, employers in the public or private sectors, such as schools, crèches, and hospitals, are accorded the right to check whether a job applicant is fit to work with children or mentally disabled people. I am glad, Chairperson, to report that in the first quarter of this financial year, Correctional Services obtained a 100% success rate in delivering a guilty verdict for a number of offenses involving 26 individuals employed by the department. This is an 8% improvement from the 92% of the previous financial year. Honorable members, regarding the qualified opinion by the Auditor General on movable tangible assets, the asset register is currently updated continuously with new additions and disposals. Asset balancing and reconciliation is now done on a monthly basis to identify and rectify the discrepancies. The policy regarding the handling of urgent and emergency cases has also been amended, and all cases must now serve before the relevant bid adjudication committees. Honorable members, the transformation program of our democratic government necessitates that prisons shift from centers of mortification to places of new beginnings. Education and vocational skills are therefore at the heart of our rehabilitation enterprise. From 2010 to 2013, 73,881 inmates participated in education programs. We should celebrate the fact that the number of full-time correctional center schools registered with the Department of Education increased from 1 in 2009 to 14 in 2014. We take notice too that in the 2013 grade 12 examinations, Umlatiti Learning Center at Barberton Youth Center in Mpumalanga achieved a 100% pass rate. It is heartening too to learn about the story of Chiviwa, Given Mukwebo, from Makado. He was imprisoned for 11 years and is on parole. He pursued a creative writing course with UNISA and on his release published his short story collection. Today, Mukwebo is a poet and community journalist who topped the inaugural Polokwane Literary Festival. Chairperson, it is not all gloom and doom in the correctional services as some of the speakers in this debate would want us to believe. Honorable members, this department has production workshops which operate a business units, including 10 workshops, 10 steel workshops, 19 textile workshops, a shoe factory, and 3 sanitary towels units. There are 21 farms and 96 small vegetable sites. The agricultural enterprises include piggery, beef and dairy production, chicken and egg production, fruit and vegetable production. The department is aiming towards self-sufficiency through full utilization of its 40,000 hectares of correctional center farmland, reaching our target at about 18% less cost than open market is our intention. Over the past 2 years, almost 30 million kilograms of vegetables, fruit, and meat were produced by inmates of correctional center, farms, and abattoirs. The department has adopted various orphanages, old age homes, and schools and continues to donate surplus products to disadvantaged communities. As per the National Framework on Offender Labor, the department is increasing the number of offenders who participate in offender labor and skills development programs. On the 12th February 2013, the department signed a memorandum of understanding with the Department of Basic Education to use offender labor to build schools and supply furniture. The obligations of the department include manufacture and delivery of school furniture, rehabilitation of school furniture, construction of school infrastructure, maintenance and refurbishment of schools, and establishment of school gardens. As the Department of Justice and Correctional Services, we will continue to deliver justice to victims and ensure that offenders make restitution both to society for their crimes and leave correctional services with better skills and prospects, which will result in a second chance towards becoming ideal citizens.
Honorable Deputy Minister, your time has expired.
I thank you, Honorable Speaker.
Thank you. Honorable Mpumlwana.
Thank you, Honorable Chair. Honorable Chair, Honorable Minister of Justice, Correctional Services, Honorable members, Honorable Justice Shabalala, Honorable guests.
On a point of order, Madam Chair.
Point of order.
Is it really correct that a member of this House can say that Abelungu Beisa, which is really racial? It's a racist comment.
I didn't say
and
that.
I think that no, I'm not talking about. I'm not talking to you. I heard that member there. I heard that member there say that this is a sitting, official sitting of the Parliament of South Africa.
Thank you, Honorable Likwata.
Country committed to non-racialism.
I heard your order that you called.
Thank you.
Honorable Mutsaka.
Honorable Chairperson, doesn't Honorable Likwata recognize all official languages in this country? Why is he prohibiting members of the ANC to use other official languages?
Okay, order, honorable members. Thank you, Honorable Mutsaga. Before you come in, Honorable Pumlwana, Honorable Member, can you withdraw that utterance?
I withdraw, Chair.
Thank you very much. Honorable Pumlwana, please continue.
Honorable guests and honorable and respectable members of the Department of Correctional Services, ladies and gentlemen, may I take this opportunity to congratulate the Minister and the Deputy Minister of Justice and Correctional Services for their appointment, having been chosen to lead this department. I'm humbled by the opportunity offered to me to participate in this debate. Yesterday, Honorable Mutsaga strongly advocated for the reform of our legal and justice system and for the revival of the African methods of dispute resolution. Indeed, if that happens, it will go a long way to break the cycle of crime in our society. In a traditional African society, when a person commits a crime against a member of another family, the two families hold a meeting. The aim of this meeting is to discuss forgiveness, peace, and compensation for the victim. I suggest that the Honorable Self approaches Honorable Mutsaga for an advice on this matter. Presently, a person who is suspected of having committed a crime is removed from his family and from society, taken to court, and is tried without involvement of his community. If he is found guilty, he is sent to prison for a long time, say about 40 years. When he had served half of his sentence, he is paroled, and his community is persuaded to accept him back. The department, therefore, has a duty to correct the offending behavior of these people and prepare them for parole. And for their reintegration to society. And this, Honorable Minister, your department is doing very well. Offenders are building homes that are accepted by the society. Offenders are making furniture. I think let's look at the good side of it.
Yes, yes. That's another applause.
Parole allows for the conditional release of offenders from a correctional center into the community prior to the expiration of their entire sentence of imprisonment, as imposed by the court of law. This means that the offender is released from prison before the expiry of his whole sentence. This allows the offender to return to normal community life, albeit under controlled conditions, under supervision of correctional officials. Before 1994, the task of considering an offender for parole was done by prison officials. There was no consideration for the interest of the victim and of communities. Prisoners were also kept incarcerated without being rehabilitated. A wonderful ANC government has since changed that. It changed the prison into a correctional center. Mandela is a son of the African National Congress, shaped by the ANC. It believes that, the ANC government believes that there's no dustbin to dispose, where you can dispose a person. So this department is doing a very good job. It's taking the hardened criminals and change them into perfect gentlemen. The ANC National Conference in Polokwane resolved that there has to be an encouragement of community participation in parole boards and corrections. The emphasis is now on correcting the offending behavior of the offender, to rehabilitate him, and to break the cycle of crime. The interest of the victim is also considered. Before an offender is considered for
Order,
parole...
Chairperson. Order, Chairperson. Chairperson, can I address you? The noise that within the house, we
Honourable
can't
member,
hear
you're
from
standing
both
on
sides.
which point? On which point are you standing?
The decorum of the house, the noise, there's so much.
Sit down, honourable members. Honourable Pumlana, please continue.
I hope, Honorable Chair, you'll give me my minutes. Thank you. Although an offender has no right to be paroled, parole is an integrated part of a penal system, and where an offender has demonstrated during his or her incarceration that he has been rehabilitated, that he is unlikely to be a danger to society, the board may approve recommend that offender to be released. Parole therefore provides offenders with an incentive to demonstrate their commitment to rehabilitation and correcting offending behavior, which are important elements of them becoming productive citizens. When considering this to release a person, these are the things that the parole board is considering. Another thing that this very good government has done, Honorable Chair, is to make sure that the people who are in the parole board are independent people.
Yes, yes.
Ordinary, respectable citizens who takes a decision objectively. They are quasi-judicial tribunal, and therefore their decision is not necessarily that of the department. In a normal course of events, sometimes there is also a parole board that considers a medical parole. As from the 1st of March 2012, medical parole has been expanded to include cases where an offender is suffering from a terminal disease or condition, or if an offender is rendered physically incapacitated as a result of injury, disease, or illness. In normal course of events, a medical practitioner will identify offenders who might qualify for possible medical parole. An offender or family member may also apply for medical parole, but any such application must be recommended by a medical practitioner before it will be submitted for decision. A medical practitioner will do a thorough assessment of an offender's medical condition, and if in his opinion physical medical condition warrants consideration of medical parole, such an application will be submitted to Medical Advisory Board, which was constituted by the minister. Should medical parole be approved, the offender will be placed into the system of community corrections.
Honourable Pumla.
Honourable Chairperson, is it parliamentary in a parliament to address the head of state by just his first name and surname, not even saying president or honourable?
Can you...
To respond to the point of order, Madam Honourable Chairperson, when the Honourable President Jacob Zuma freed Xavier Sheikh from prison, he was not the Honourable President.
Member?
Thank you.
Honourable Mpumlwana, please continue.
I want to inform the honourable members on the other side that if there is an improved medical health, it's not a good ground for cancellation of the parole. I think that they should commend your department, Minister, The problem with the opposition, Minister, that they are opposing. They are here to oppose. You say good things, you want to build schools, they oppose. You want to give people parole, they oppose. You do anything, they oppose. Because their duty is to oppose. It's up. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honorable Mpumlwana. Honorable Likota.
Thank you, Chairperson. I was particularly moved by the observation made by the Deputy Minister with regard to the position of the lumpen proletariat in the Angolan situation, as he quoted Agostino Neto. The sad thing about it is that in our country, the lumpen proletariat is not committing suicide. On the contrary, society has created conditions. We have created conditions in which it is thriving and increasing. That's the tragedy facing our country. And this, of course, we have done in many ways. One of the first things we did has been to honor individuals who had committed crimes, who were proven in the court to have committed those crimes, and we treated them as national heroes who had done something great for us, all of us, without exception. Your task, Minister, is unenviable, sir. Because when leaders of society treat those who act contrary to the values and laws of that society as heroes, as to be respected and honored, as examples to be emulated, that society is committing suicide. That is the situation that confronts us in this country today. I look across, I'm saying the leaders of this society. And the first leaders of this society is the ruling party, is the opposition. It is business leaders. It is church leaders. It is leaders across the spectrum. South African society is amused when things that we should be ashamed of are happening. We don't say, this is not us. We talk of this, we protect it.
Honorable Chairperson.
I do want to say, therefore.
Honorable Likota, can you hear me?
Honorable Kota, are you ready to take a question?
You have not asked.
I could have told you before she opened her mouth that she was going to say that. Now, if I may, madam, I proceed. I have no time to take any frivolous question. I simply have no time for it. Let me just say this. Let me say this, therefore. Minister, this is your first budget. I could attack you, but I would be attacking the work of the previous minister. This is your first budget. This is your first statement. It's important for us to see what you are going to do over the next 12 months. At that point in time, we will be able to say whether you are doing something to reverse this. The sadness of it all is that your department cannot change this society all by itself.
Honorable Likota.
It's got to be linked, its efforts must be linked with the other departments.
Honorable Likota.
12 months from now, we will have a say on this matter.
Honorable
Thank
Likota.
you very much.
Your time is up.
Excuse me?
Your time is long up.
I'm sorry. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much. Honorable Swart.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honorable Minister. Honorable Minister, the ACDP believes that one has to look at recent parliamentary reports of the previous parliament to put the department in its proper perspective. And if one does that, then one has an understanding of the challenges that the department does face. And yes, there are areas of excellence, and we as the opposition need to recognize those as well. We've got the workshops, agricultural gardens and that. But let's just remember what in October the Correctional Services Portfolio Committee said, and this is across political lines. It is important, it said, that at the outset the committee is concerned about the very limited progress the department has made over the past 5 years, not only in relation to financial management, but in its overall service delivery to sentenced offenders. Much of what has been identified as areas of serious concern in 2011-2012 have remained unchallenged in 2012-2013. Stakeholders have also observed that practically all recommendations made by the committee, that is the Parliament, have been ignored, as little evidence can be found that they have been considered and, where possible, implemented. So that, Chair, you have to consider that when we consider where we're going forward, that historical report. There are serious challenges with the department, and the previous committee called for a credible turnaround strategy for it. This committee must ensure that such a plan is presented and implemented. And of course, we need to, and part of that must be dealing with the corruption, part of that must be dealing with the qualified audit, which, as the Minister or Deputy Minister referred to, the movable tangible assets issue, and of course, part of it must be to address the whole core delivery issue of this department, and that is rehabilitation and social integration programs. How can it be that there can be underspending in this aspect when it is a core function? Surely that is something that must be addressed. Now, given the high incidence of assault, abuse and smuggling, we also support the Honourable Vincent Smith's call for, and the committee accepted this recommendation, that the department must look into utilising closed-circuit television and cell phone blocking technologies. This will enable ongoing monitoring. But it's so obvious. Why wasn't this done a number of years ago, Honourable Smith? And it is something that we fully support. Overcrowding remains a problem and is a root cause, but we also believe from the ACDP's perspective, let's look at Section 63A and 62F of the Criminal Procedure Act, which allow magistrates to review bail and also allow courts to place awaiting trial prisoners under correctional supervision. Let's have a look at those two aspects, as there are areas that can be improved upon. Chairperson, lastly, as a portfolio committee, it is going to be very difficult to deal with both correctional services and the justice issues. We as the portfolio committee don't understand why it was collapsed into one. And this is a serious issue because we will not be able to do proper oversight and our legislative burden. And this isn't an issue for the executive, but it is something that we need to consider. Thank you very much, Chairperson.
I just want also to bring to the attention of members that the budget votes debates are an opportunity for members to ask the ministers relevant questions and so forth, and give all members to participate fairly and freely, and not ask frivolous questions and waste time of the
Chairperson.
Honorable Mutsaga.
Can I just make a correction? That it is not...
Honorable Mutsaga. Honorable Mutsaga, you're standing on which point?
To make a correction.
No, Honorable Mutsaga.
It is said,
Honorable
Chair,
Honorable.
Chair.
Honorable Mutsaga, I have not given you an opportunity to say. Thank you. And the member has already finished speaking.
No, it's a correction.
No, Honorable Mutsaga. No.
Chair.
I have not given you an opportunity. Thank you very much. Chair. Honorable member.
Chair, whilst the member is finished, but he has misled the
On
House.
which point are you speaking on? Which rule?
I want to correct on what the member is.
No, honorable members. Thank you.
Chair, I think, Chair, if you may allow me.
Honorable member.
Chair, in terms of Section 69, Section 1, I think Honorable Motseha was rising on that order and provided that part of the explanation. Yes.
Honorable members.
Point of order.
Section 69(1) says an explanation during debate is allowed only when a material part of a member's speech has been misquoted or misunderstood. But such member shall not be permitted to introduce any new matter, and no debate shall be allowed upon such explanation. Thank you, honorable members.
Point of order.
Point of order.
There is no decision of the committee which rejects the measure between justice and correctional services. That's the point I wanted to make.
Thank you.
The ANC support that measure,
Okay,
and we
Honorable.
think it's workable, and we're going to make it work.
Thank you very much, Honorable Muteka.
If I may.
Honorable members, no, please sit down. The honorable member, from his party's point of view, and him as an individual, sees this department being too big, so he won't be able to cope. But it doesn't mean that it's going to be disaggregated again. It's his point of view that it is too huge. It doesn't necessarily mean that it's not workable. Thank you very much for raising all the issues and corrections. Honorable Mutapo.
Honorable Chairperson, Honorable Minister of Justice and Correctional Service, Deputy Minister responsible for Correctional Services, Chairperson and Honorable Members of Portfolio Committee, Honorable Executive Management and Personnel of the Department, stakeholders of the Department of Correctional Services, ladies and gentlemen, Thobela, Absheni, Dimacheroni, Slochile. Honorable Litchfield Shabalala and other members, let me remind you that the same year, 2011, which you referred to by saying the Department of Correctional Service, a lot of things about it, that is the same year wherein the said department was rated the third best institution in fighting corruption by the Public Service Commission. Honorable Chairperson, Section 35, subsection 2E of our Constitution states that everyone who is detained, including every sentenced prisoner, has the right to conditions of detention that are consistent with human dignity, including at least exercise and the provision at state expense of adequate accommodation, nutrition, reading material, and medical treatment. This provision of the Constitution also includes female offenders who are incarcerated in our correctional facilities across the country. Honorable Chairperson, the issue of female inmates in our correctional facilities is very close to my heart. Chairperson, most women in prisons are victims of severe and prolonged physical and/or sexual abuse. Female offenders constitute only less than 3% of the total inmates population in South Africa. According to the 2012-2013 annual report of the Judicial Inspectorate of Correctional Services, there were 1,904 sentenced adult females and 505 sentenced female juveniles in our correctional facilities for that financial year. Honorable Chairperson, we are aware that female correctional facilities are few in South Africa. As a result, many women are incarcerated far from their families. This is one of the disadvantages to the small number of female offenders in our correctional facilities, as acknowledged in the White Paper of Corrections of 2005. Honorable members, honorable ministers and deputy minister, in his State of the Nation address in June this year, the Honorable President Jacob Gedleyihlekisa Zuma has indicated that Minister Susan Shabangu will work with other government departments, agencies, private sector, and non-governmental organizations to promote women empowerment, development, and human rights. The Department of Correctional Services should also play a role in assisting Minister Shabangu to implement this priority of government. Honorable Chairperson and members, many female inmates come from disadvantaged backgrounds, and as such, it might be difficult and expensive for their families to visit them regularly. The white paper on corrections encourages the Department of Correctional Services to find creative ways in which contact between female inmates and their families remain intact. This will facilitate smooth reintegration back into society once they are released. This is very progressive indeed. Honorable members, currently there are 448 inmates who are on TB treatment in correctional facilities. And Honorable Chairperson, I'm impressed that the Department of Correctional Services will increase expenditure on medicine from this financial year onwards to provide for improved access to treatment for inmates. This is indeed a good story to tell. Honorable members, another challenge facing correctional services is the scourge of HIV/AIDS in correctional facilities. The Millennium Development Goals report also mentioned that HIV/AIDS, tuberculosis, and malaria are the three major global public health problems that undermine development in most sub-Saharan African countries. Currently, in our correctional facilities, there are 15,417 HIV-positive inmates who are receiving antiretroviral therapy, ART. In their annual performance plan for 2014-2015, Honorable Chairperson, the department intends to have 95% of inmates on ART who need such treatment. Chairperson, in order for the department to reach this target, there must be medical practitioners who administer such treatment in correctional services. The shortage of medical practitioners in the Department of Correctional Services is a cause for concern. According to the 2012-2013 annual report of the Department of Correctional Services, vacancy rate for healthcare professionals, especially professional nurses, was at 11.2%. It is important that the department prioritize filling these vacancies in order to win the fight against HIV/AIDS, TB, and other diseases affecting inmates in correctional centers. Chairperson and honorable members, this will be in line with the National Development Plan, which states that the allocation of resources and availability of health personnel in the public sector should be improved. Chairperson, the fight against HIV/AIDS should be tackled in all fronts. In his State of the Nation address, the Honorable President also said that we need to expand on our mass HIV prevention communication campaign. Honorable Chairperson and members, in order to win the fight against all these diseases in our correctional centers, emphasis must also be placed on providing inmates with good nutrition and encouraging them to lead a healthy lifestyle. The NDP also emphasized that South Africans need to be more physically active as part of their culture. According to the NDP, every month there should be a day dedicated to physical activity where everyone is encouraged to take part therein. Honorable Minister, these recommendations should also be considered for inmates in all correctional centers. Section 11 of the Correctional Services Act 111 of 1998, as amended, stipulates that every inmate must be given the opportunity to exercise sufficiently in order to remain, healthy and is entitled to at least 1 hour of exercise daily. If weather permits, this exercise must take place in an open air. Modulasetulo, re na re le lekgotla leo le bušago re thekga tekanyetšo ye ya kgoro ya ditirelo tša tshokollo. Ke a leboga.
Thank you very much, Honorable Mutapo. Honorable Chishonga.
Honorable Chair,
Honorable Minister and Deputy Minister, honorable members of Parliament, I have just come across, it's not me, I have come across the statement by Shakespeare that says, all men are mad, they only differ in degrees. Now, correctional services, parole board needs attention. Awaiting trial, yes, but we must look at the cause. The legacy advocate, Honorable Advocate Mutsecha, I agree with you when it comes to the holistic approach in healing. That is spiritual, mental, bodily, and otherwise. I think that is what should take place in the correctional service. And the word correction will have more meaning. I think the emphasis must be put on that one. But I do not agree with you, Honorable, nothing personal. When you talk about the legacy, I mean, I just had philosophy of history in what you were telling us. Holistic healing is very important, and prevention is better than cure. I think the emphasis by the Department of Correctional Service will be put on that one. And we want to see people from correctional service having skills to help themselves. Thank you. Before Chairperson, you said I must sit down. Thank you very much. But we agree, because if we do not support the vote, what do we want to happen?
Thank you, Honorable Chichonga. I heard some whispers that you said all men are mad, so not women. Thank you very much. Honorable Relengais.
Thank you, Chairperson. Correctional centres across South Africa house roughly 157,000 people. That is 294 prisoners for every 100,000 of us. This is on par with the population of Engobo or Stellenbosch local municipalities. And in most cases, the prison population is as diverse and as complex. South African prisons are home to a cross-section of our population, men, women, children, and young people who have fallen foul of the law. Tragically, most prisoners are young black men, and more than a third, or 53,000 of them, are youth. That is, Member Mochecha, young people like me, and not like you, whose entire lives lie ahead of them, lives that are more often broken or further destroyed in prison. According to former Minister Ndebele, for every 23,000 inmates released in a month, another 25,000 enter the system. One step forward, two steps back. The acting commissioner estimates the rate of reoffending to be between 67% and 94%. One step forward, three steps back. And so we write the prison waltz of hopelessness. Chairperson, for too long, prisons have been regarded as breeding grounds of criminality, places of punitive authoritarianism, and backwaters of everything despised by society. They also represent a microcosm of a divided country racked by racial segregation and discrimination, as well as repressive measures such as solitary confinement and violent interrogation. Former Minister Ngonde Balfour's words from beyond the political grave ring as true today as it did when he put them at the foreword to the much celebrated white paper on corrections. The celebration accompanying this white paper has not been matched with the political will to ensure its implementation. Perhaps this is because the ANC has spent the last 5 years hard at work to ensure certain people stay out of prison instead of addressing what goes on in them. This department has frequently been attached to a ministry that was often a mere placeholder for the ineffectual, the irrelevant, or the incompetent. Today, the department's orphan status has finally been entrenched as a mere afterthought attachment to justice. Given the rate at which the President has been expanding his executive circle of friends, I am surprised that we don't have a Minister for Corrections and a Minister for Services. Correctional services should not be the last step in the criminal justice system. It should be the first step on the journey towards rehabilitation, reintegration, and where possible, reconciliation and reparation. Instead, our prisons operate like a revolving door where people get stuck in a vicious cycle of criminality and despair, obliterating any real hope of an alternative future. Gangsterism, violence, bribery, corruption, a raging TB epidemic, HIV and AIDS, rape, sexual assault, and unmanageable levels of overcrowding. With harrowing conditions like these, every prison sentence is a death sentence that kills careers, it kills relationships, it often kills people, and kills any hope of a better tomorrow. If this is the good story, then it is time for us to write the new story that the National Development Plan champions. When this plan speaks of its core focus on the capabilities of people, it speaks of all our people, not just the connected. Prisoners are people, people like us. They are mothers, they are fathers, they are sisters, brothers, sons, and daughters. Moreover, some members of this House were once also imprisoned for the fight against apartheid. There is even talk that other more recent additions, although absent here today, may still head that way, although for completely different reasons. Most of us either know or are connected to a person who is serving or has served a prison sentence. In my case, a close family friend was convicted of murdering his wife and sentenced to 12 years in prison. He came out of Zonderwater prison a changed man, having seized the educational and other developmental opportunities presented to him, and today he is reintegrated into society as a full contributing member. Success stories like these should be the rule and not the exception. Chair, this is not only possible, it is within our reach, and the blueprint already exists for this government in the White Paper, the National Development Plan, and in a range of DA policy proposals that we, in our generosity, will give to the absent minister. The DA believes that the correctional service system must balance the appropriate punishment of convicted criminals with the need to reduce the likelihood that offenders will reoffend. Successful correctional services break the cycle of reoffending and ensure that prisoners stay out once they get out. The conditions under which prisoners are kept impact on their behavior after release and can have consequences for the way in which prisons and offenders are viewed by society. We can change the way our prisons operate by matching the budget allocation with the changing way in which we think about correctional services to ensure that this does what the name implies. Make no mistake, convicted criminals must be punished for their crimes, but the punishment must fit the crime. It must be a core priority of the correctional system to keep offenders out of jail, to avoid further criminalization and not just friends. It must be, more importantly, the correctional service system must be oriented towards rehabilitation and successful reintegration. It is time that the budget reflect this. At 130% capacity, prison overcrowding limits opportunities for rehabilitation, maintaining prisons as universities of crime that incubate a culture of violence and breed prisoners that come out better criminals than they were when they went in. Overcrowding can be eased by building additional facilities, improving the management of remand prisoners, and crucially, making better use of alternative sentences and introducing second chance legislation. Rehabilitation must be improved through the structured management of the rehabilitation programs, specifically of individual prisoners, through the consistent implementation of sentence plans. Rehabilitation programs must include purposeful work by all able-bodied inmates. My colleague likes to remark that prisons work where prisoners work and contribute to society. Playing golf is not work. The reintegration of prisoners into society must be facilitated through halfway houses and an active partnership with non-governmental and community-based organizations. The NDP and White Paper's whole-of-society approach to correcting offending behavior, rehabilitation and reintegration requires this government to reposition corrections as a societal responsibility. Instead of pursuing public-private partnerships, adequately funding, staffing and re-engineering correctional services towards rehabilitation and reintegration, government appears to be heading in exactly the opposite direction. Attaching the department to the end of justice might lead to its effective integration into the criminal justice system, but it may also further entrench its orphan status and punitive nature, cementing correctional services as the dead end road, at the dead end on the road to justice. The lack of commitment and political will to implement the 2005 white paper effectively and the lack of consensus on the National Development Plan within the governing party makes the latter option, that of a dead-end road, more likely, confining the futures of thousands of people in prisons to the rubbish bins that our prisons are. Chair, you don't need children in correctional services to know that something must change. Indeed, Member Mochekga, if your children are in prisons, I dare say that you have done something wrong and are part of the problem. Minister, good luck. You have been making the right noises. The most noise, however, last night when you were trying to do the presiding officer's job. I think it is apparent that the minister may have let himself in for more than he had hoped for and is perhaps already looking for alternative deployment. I will also echo my colleague in congratulating the hard work done by well-meaning people in the correctional services and people that continue to try and ensure that their budget reflects the commitment of the 2005 white paper. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Honourable Member. The next speaker is the Honourable Smith.
Thank you, Chairperson. Honourable Minister of Justice and Correctional Services, Deputy Minister, honourable members and comrades. The harsh reality of the South African situation is that most of the current inmates at some point will be released from correctional centres and be reintegrated into our society. On release, these ex-offenders often find themselves in situations where they have limited education opportunities. They usually do not have any money, and they struggle to secure meaningful employment. Under such circumstances, the temptation to reconnect with the criminal network formed whilst incarcerated is very strong, thus leading to reoffending, and the cycle of crime begins all over again. This truth, Minister, is borne out by what members have spoken about in terms of recidivism. And we also think, Minister, that the truth of the matter is that rehabilitation programs in our center are not working as well as they should, notwithstanding that the strategic task of the department must be to focus on rehabilitation rather than incarceration. Minister, we must therefore ask the question whether the budget of DCS is being optimally employed, and we must answer the question, what is it that must be done? Chair, even as we debate this department's request for 19.7 billion, DCS has been without a national commissioner for the last 6 months, as you alluded to. In fact, Mr. Minister, this department has been without a national commissioner who has served a full term since 1994. The position of the Chief Financial Officer has been vacant for in excess of 12 months. For this department to realize its target and to ensure that taxpayers' monies are directed to government targets and goals, the leadership of DCS must be finalized as soon as possible to restore stability at the very top. Other critical skills such as psychiatrists, psychologists, educators, and artisan trainers must be acquired and such skills retained within the department. If DCS is to respond to the National Development Plan of creating capable state led by competent managers and employees who will heed the commitment of the President during his State of the Nation address to root out the scourge of corruption and mismanagement of resources. Minister, of the total budget of 19.7 billion, 13.3 billion is earmarked for compensation of employees, thus making our call for a stable leadership and a speedy filling of vacancies a top priority. With regard to the breakdown per program, the department needs to reprioritize and allocate much more of the 19.7 billion to programs that relate directly to rehabilitation, reintegration, development, and care of inmates. Currently, these programs that speak directly to the key deliverables of DCS combined are allocated less than 20% of the budget, while the program administration alone is allocated 18% and the program incarceration is allocated 63%. Any budget must reflect the strategic goal of the organization in its allocation of spending priority. And this and future budgets must do likewise, Mr. Minister. Mr. Minister, the committee, and dare we suggest, most experts within the industry believe that building of new correctional centers or the upgrading of current facilities, whilst important, must be balanced with the improvement of programs aimed at rehabilitation and reintegration. We therefore argue that part of the budgeted amount of 206 million rand for repairs and maintenance and part of the budgeted amount of 605 million rand for upgrade should, apart from securing the services of the critical skills that we alluded to earlier, also be used to improve the IT capacity within DCS, as well as to be invested in technology to improve management of the centers, and as a result, make our facilities conducive to rehabilitation, development, and care of inmates. The enhanced capacity of IT capacity will reduce the need to rely on manual record keeping and will make management of inmates more efficient. Minister, the current management of inmates is such that the department is not able to verify if on acceptance or on release an inmate is not sought for other court cases. Investments, as you alluded to, in a biometric system, we believe, would solve this problem. An effective IT system has the added advantage of connecting the more than 240 facilities countrywide for information management and internal financial controls that continue to be a cause of great concern for the Auditor General in as far as the reliability of information for audit purposes is concerned. With regard to technology, Mr. Minister, we continue to urge the department to invest in CCTV and mobile phone jamming capabilities. It is common cause, Minister, that correctional facilities are flooded with cell phones that are being used by inmates for all sorts of undesirable practices, including continuing their criminal activities even whilst they are behind bars. The very high prevalence of rape, of murder, dangerous weapons, and drug abuse in correctional facilities is well documented. These illegal activities tend to take place after lockup and when the number of officials on duty is reduced. Prison gangs take advantage of this situation, and for all intents and purposes, Minister, gangs and not DCS officials are in charge of correctional facilities after lockup. We are very clear, Mr. Minister, that CCTV will not eradicate these activities. However, we firmly believe that a closed-circuit camera system will act as a deterrent both to the prison gangs as well as those DCS officials who collude with inmates in smuggling contraband into our facilities. Some time ago, Mr. Minister, access control rooms were established, as Mr. Self spoke about, in certain centers. However, many control rooms have been discontinued, and we believe they must be revived. The committee, Mr. Minister, welcomes the budgeted amount of 28 million earmarked for the implementation of electronic monitoring, as this should further enhance the management of parolees. The committee is very pleased with the investment of 53 million for workshop and agricultural equipment, Minister. We believe that skilling of inmates, both as artisan and agriculturalists, will contribute greatly to making ex-offenders employable on their release and thereby reduce the risk of reoffending. The committee also welcomes the fact that generally the trend of negative audit findings is being reduced. We further welcome the fact that expenditure on consultants, entertainment, and travel are being reduced, and long may this be the case. Chairperson and honorable members, one of the saddest legacies of the past was to rob South Africans of our humaneness and has caused us to cease believing in the inherent goodness of our people. Our moral integrity as a society is measurable by how we treat vulnerable sectors amongst us. Offenders might have, and often have, committed the most heinous acts of criminality against society. But whilst incarcerated, very many are exposed to terrible acts of abuse by fellow inmates and officials. And like all citizens of our country, inmates too must enjoy the protection guaranteed in our Constitution. To fail in the efforts to successfully rehabilitate every individual who enters and spends time in correctional facilities is to slow down the journey towards achieving a united, democratic, non-racial, non-sexist, and prosperous South Africa. Chairperson, Minister, and honorable members, the DCS has a major role to play in the realization of social cohesion and the restoration of human dignity to every South African. We believe that this budget must be a vehicle by which these noble ideals are achieved and sustained, but also to correct this dominant narrative within society and within the opposition generally of defeativism and hopelessness in as far as breaking the cycle of crime. The Honorable Shabalala from the EFF said to South Africans that when the EFF is in government, they will not allow private prisons. You're late, ma'am. We are not allowing private prisons as we speak. You said, ma'am, that you will allow voters to, you said you will allow inmates to vote. You're wrong, ma'am. Inmates voted. You said you will allow all offenders to work.
Point of order, Chairperson.
You're again wrong, ma'am.
Point of order.
What is your point of order, sir?
Chairperson, will the honourable member please refer to other honourable members?
What is your point of order, honourable member?
He is.
Don't make a ruling. What is your point of order?
The honourable member is referring to the Honourable Litchfield Chabalala as ma'am. He should be calling her honourable member. Thank you, Chairperson.
Refer to the honourable member.
Honourable Chabalala, you indicated that when you take over as government, offenders will be allowed to work. They are allowed to work as we speak, ma'am. In fact, this committee in the previous term said no work, no school, no parole. We've said it last term.
On a
So
point
you are
of
wrong.
order, Chair, is it parliamentary for Honorable Chabalala to say that Honorable Smith is telling a lie? Could you rule on that, please?
Honorable Chabalala, did you refer to the Honorable Smith with those words?
I said it's a lie. I didn't say he's a liar, Honorable Chairperson.
Honorable, you said it. Can you just repeat what you said?
I said it's a lie. It is a lie.
Honorable members, you may sit. Let us maintain the decorum of the House and not refer to each other in a derogative way. And Honorable Smith, will you refer to the Honorable Chabalala as honorable and not ma'am?
I shall do so, Chairperson. And Honorable Chairperson, let me reiterate, Honorable Chabalala, it is true that there will be no more private prisons. Honorable Chair, let me indicate to Honorable Chabalala that it is true that offenders are allowed to vote. Through you, Honorable Chair, let me say to Honorable Chabalala that it is true that offenders are allowed to work. It is also true, Chairperson, that the previous committee had encouraged them to work or go to school or to be denied parole. These are the truths. Chair, Mr. Self asked, Honorable Self, asked or indicated that he was not sure if the chairperson was giving a sermon or a history lesson. Mr. Self, Honorable Self, it is fine to give a sermon. Go and ask your Honorable Maimane. He's a theologian. There's nothing wrong with giving a sermon. There's also nothing wrong, Honorable Self, with giving a history lesson. It is because history will teach us never to commit the crimes that we committed in the past. So there's nothing wrong with that. I also then want to answer to die agbare Groenewald. Ek sou dit in Afrikaans gesê het agbare Groenewald, maar ek wil dit sê sodat die hele Suid-Afrika my verstaan. You stood up and you commented on the parole or lack thereof of Eugene de Kock and indicated that he's a political prisoner. In my view, sir, he was a defender of a crime against humanity. And therefore, to equate a defender of a crime against humanity, to equate that individual with people who fought for freedom and who continue to languish in our jails, Honorable Ngwango, is an injustice. Let me continue, sir. I welcome your suggestion of us having a discussion on this matter. Because it can't be that if you are rich or you are resourced, then people make a noise for you to be dismissed as one man. And there are so many other political prisoners not there. It can't be that value of a white person is treated higher than value of all other people. Otherwise, you would have stood up here and spoken about all political prisoners, not only about a select political prisoner. And I ask you, Chairperson, you didn't.
Order, honorable members. Continue, honorable
Achtbare
Smith.
Groenewald, toe u praat, het ek gesit en luister, want ek is disciplined. Dis hoekom ek gesit en luister het. Ek vra dieselfde van u. Al stem jy nie saam nie, ek vra dat u sit en luister, dat ek jou die waarheid vertel.
Achtbare voorsitter, is die achtbare lid bereid om 'n vraag te beantwoord?
Ek is glad nie bereid om 'n
Honorable Groenewald, the member is not prepared to take a question.
Achtbare Groenewald, dit is verkeerd om op te staan en te pleit vir een offender, terwyl daar so baie anders daar is. Dis al wat ek sê. As u opstaan in hierdie huis, praat van al die political prisoners. Hoekom wil jy net praat van een? And you are saying to us that we must, I might be wrong, you worse. I am telling you that you are worse. I am telling you that you are worse because you stand up and you say that he's a
Honorable
political prisoner.
Smith, your time is now expired, sir. Thank you. Order, honorable members. Order. I now call upon the Honorable the Minister of Justice and Correctional Services to reply to the debate.
Thank you, Chairperson, and I'd like to thank honorable members for the contribution they've made to this debate, and in particular for supporting this budget vote, that is those that were kind and generous enough with their votes, because it is through resources that are allocated to us that will be able to continue our vision of ensuring that South Africans not only feel safe, but are indeed safe, as articulated in the ruling party's policies, including the National Development Plan, which incidentally the opposition keeps on misleading us into believing that they truly support, and yet on hindsight go and criticize the very essence or elements of the same policy. But be it as it may, let me just concur with my former Chief Whip, the Honorable Chairperson, but also thank him and his team, the ANC, members of the ANC study group, under the leadership of the Whip, not only for the positive contribution they've made to this debate, but also for the excellent positive ideas that they've shared with us, which we'll take on board in taking the work of this department forward. In particular, I'd also like to thank the veteran of the committee, my dear friend, Honorable Smith, who closed the debate very nicely by pulling together all the various strings that will provide what in our language we call them umkombandlela. But Chair, there's just a few things that one needs to clarify. You see, I'm not sure whether Honorable Groenewald, by referring to Mr. De Kook as a political prisoner or saying that our decision relating to his parole was a political decision, is himself expressing political confusion. And perhaps if he paid attention to the reasons that we gave to the decision that we made in regard to that matter, he would have cleared his mind by understanding that the decision that we took was based purely on a point of law and informed by the principles in our own constitution. Nothing more, nothing less. Now, I also just wanted to assure Honorable Mngango again, we bumped into each other in the bathroom earlier, that indeed, and again on the same grounds that we made this decision on the de Kock measure, we have a situation where a pending consideration by the President for releasing certain political prisoners on presidential pardon was abruptly halted through a successful court challenge in the Constitutional Court to the effect that you cannot release without consultation of members of the families of victims or victims themselves. And that's exactly the basis on which we have delayed a decision in regard to the de Kock matter. Now you ask yourself, if these fellow South Africans are truly colorblind, why do they raise these matters when it is black people whose release is at issue, and when a white person's release is at issue, suddenly the very same basis on which they objected becomes the basis that suddenly does not apply in this instance. Selective justice. This is not what our Constitution espouses. And certainly, I must say, it's typical of our opposition in this country. They will oppose along such lines. In case I get accused of being a racist myself, I will not repeat the word race. But the point is made. I think that the Honorable Chairperson, going back to his point, is spot on. There is a history and there is a context to everything. Crime in this country has a historical context. The reason why our correctional facilities are filled with young black males has a history to it. The reason why the majority of black people live under squalid conditions, and there we will agree with you, Honorable Shabalala, except that we don't think that your idea of freedom, of economic freedom fighting takes us any further.
Honorable Minister, your time has now expired.
Thank you very much. Thank you for all the support.
Thank you, Honorable Minister. Honorable members are reminded that the following extended public committee debates will take place this afternoon. Vote 35, tourism, will take place in the Old Assembly Chamber. Vote 7, public works, will take place in the Good Hope Chamber. And vote 27, communications, will take place in committee room E249. All these debates will start at 2 p.m. That concludes this debate and the business of this extended public committee. The committee will now rise.
Chairperson, just an announcement.
No, the committee will now rise.
An announcement from the... An announcement.
Make the announcement. Make the announcement. Make it out of here.
Hello. Yes.
Yesterday we hammered them in the first part, communication department, which were dealing with SABC. Now they will come back now. It's 249.
So you're currently...